anti-checker.
We will return to your scheduled programming shortly, or we are currently experiencing technical difficulty.
Good morning, everyone. Michael J. Crawford, the anti-checker here, and good to see you as always. So BIRDOPREY 5 is first in the house. Good to see you, Bird. Richie Poole also claims to be first, but is actually a very quick second. Andre is here from Bosnia. Good to see you, my friend. Darren says, good morning, a dude's thoughts. Those who call the truth hate the truth. That is a very profound and very true statement, my friend. Black Adam says, anti-checker, here is everybody's favorite potato. It's me, Mario. Okay. And he also says, if I vanish, I'm waiting for a Discord call. No problem, Black Adam, I understand. Life doesn't stop just because I happen to be streaming. John DeMarco says, good morning. Peter Quinn says, good afternoon, anti-checker and all. Got to remember, we have people from all over this planet. Jay War says, good morning. Peter Quinn says, the DLL problem is solved. And asks, how did the appointment go on Wednesday? I'll get into that in just a minute here. 47 Yorktone says, hello, Mr. Anti-Checker. So, since you asked, Peter, here's the update on my physical health situation. Basically, I already told you after the MRI, they determined a couple of things. That there was arthritis at the same location as my herniated disc issue, which was aggravating the pain, which is why I've been in so much pain as of late. When I went to see the specialist, I was also informed that I have an inflamed lymph node in that area, which could be nothing, or it could be something very, very serious. And so that's another issue that we're going to have to deal with over the coming weeks. And I'm going in for some labs tomorrow, and then I'm seeing my primary doctor a week from tomorrow to discuss the lymph node situation. For the back, what they're doing is twofold. They're going to, at least for right now, they're going to do an epidural on my back, which is a procedure to try and prevent the pain from my spine from basically registering in my brain. Number two, they are going to replace the cartilage in my right knee. Now, you might be thinking, but anti-checker, you've been off work because of your back, not because of your knee. That is very true. However, I do have the most severe arthritis in my body is in my right knee. And because of that, I've been walking with a limp for, years now. And the doctor, the spine and joint specialist that I saw said that she believes that because of the fact that my knee has been such a problem, it's aggravated the back, and so she wants to deal with both simultaneously. So the replacement, it's not a full-on knee replacement. I'm not getting a bionic knee. This is that would be the next step if this doesn't work. What they're doing is it's actually a gel that is a cartilage replacement that they actually inject into your knee. We'll see if that works. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, then we have to probably start talking about knee replacement. Same thing like with the epidural on the back. If that works, awesome. If that doesn't work, then we have to start looking at surgical procedures, which I'm hoping that doesn't come to that. My biggest concern, obviously, right now is the lymph node situation, because while the lymph node in and of itself doesn't cause any physical discomfort at this point, if it is cancerous or something, obviously that is a major issue that needs to take number one focus of everything. And so we'll find out. Hopefully, I'm assuming that my doctor is going to order a biopsy after he basically fills me in on exactly what they found there. So that's where everything is, Peter. That's where I am right now. I'm still off of work because I can't focus for more than an hour or two at a time because of the pain, and also now in part because of the medication they gave me. It makes concentrating on things very, very difficult. However, I am here for you guys, and I'm not going to stop unless I'm physically incapable. Life with Matthew says, happy Sabbath all, just stopping by while you're getting ready for church. Welcome, Matthew, and have a great day at church. Although remember, technically Saturday is the Sabbath, but it doesn't matter. And this is that's actually a good segue into some theology there, is people get obsessed with what day of the week you should worship God. The Sunday is considered the Lord's Day. However, Saturday is the Sabbath. And when people were concerned over the Sabbath in the Bible, Christ said that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And basically, the idea there is that the Sabbath is a gift, a day off, a day of rest. And it doesn't matter what day of the week you use that for. You should take one day off. That's why, honestly, I don't do live streams generally on Saturday. Is I want to have one day a week that I'm off, that I don't have to worry about anything. And that's also happens to be the day we generally go to church. So, Mad Scientist says, and Mr. Miles, I love it. What is brain? Yeah, good question, the way I feel right now. Getting a bionic knee? Not exactly. Hopefully not. Mad Scientist says, prayers for your healthy recovery. Thank you, Mad Scientist. A dude's thoughts, he's going to be the $1 million man. Well, I'm already $400 into this with the MRI. Get a bionic back? I would love to, but yeah. No, the knee brace ain't tricky. Yeah, I've metal and plastic in my knee. Yeah, I don't want to get a fake knee, but if I have to, I will. Mr. Miles says nanoprobes would fix it. Yes. Where is that Borg technology when you need it? Here it says the knee brace is metal and the knee stops so you won't bend it too much. Okay. Captain George is in the house. Good to see you, my friend. It's hello there. And let's see, just finished my driving shift. Morning, Anti-Tracker. Hey, Captain, I hope you are doing well. Darren is quoting the Bible. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Yes. But again, remember that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And that's the problem, you know, where Christ got pissed off. And I actually think this is kind of interesting. Christ only gets pissed off at religious leaders. You never see Christ pissed off at so-called heathens. And this is a lesson that Christians need to learn. The only people that Christians have a right to, from a theological perspective, get angry with, the only people that you should point your finger and say, that person is committing a sin against God, the only people that you can say that about are Christians. If you point the finger, oh, by the way, take a look right there. But wait, yes, that is that guy, Andrew, my good friend. He's given the announcements. That's kind of funny. So there is Andrew moving around. In case you want, yes, he is a real person. But the oh gosh, I lost my whole train of thought because I got distracted by Andrew. Thanks, Andrew. Jerk. What was I saying? Dang, I just completely lost it. Then this medication is horrible. So I'll just get back to the chat and see if one of you guys want, if you care, remind me. Anyway, let's see. Saturday is technically the original day, but we should keep worship God every day. That's true, dude. But my point is that if you're, you know, if you take a day of rest, it can be any day of the week. You know, because you know what? God knows you got to work. God knows you got to pay bills. God knows your situation. And so to suggest that, oh no, if you know, like for example, with my schedule, when I'm working my regular shift, I work Saturdays and Sundays. I can't take Saturday and just not do anything. Right. And I can't say, well, you know, I understand that technically I could go to my boss and say it's against my religion to work on the Sabbath. And you know what? I don't believe that, and this is honest, I don't believe that Christians should be the person making trouble at work. We should be the people doing the absolute best job we can do. With respect, Black Adam says, with everything going on this last year, I'm so worried about your mental health. Thank you, Black Adam, I think. I understand. It has been a very stressful year. I will tell you, you know, between my sister-in-law's death, my mother-in-law's death, the current mess with my health, it has been an incredibly rough ride. At the same time, it's been a glorious ride in that I've met a lot of you guys. And in fact, you know, when we ran into a financial brick wall twice in the last year, you guys bailed us out. And so, and let's see, what's Mrs. Anti-Trekker is, let's see. Yeah, so Mrs. Anti-Trekker is reiterating, she's reminding me what I was talking about. It's the only people you can point a finger at, make judgment against are other Christians. Yes. The Bible clearly says that when you see the heathens, the pagans, the non-believers behaving in all sorts of ways that are against what Christianity believes in, you are not to pass judgment on them because they are not Christians. The Bible says that in black and freaking white. And yet, what do we see all day long? Christians pointing the fingers at the gay community, at the at whatever group, pointing the fingers saying, they're bad, they're bad. You know what? They need to shut the F up. Seriously. Andrew looks nothing like the picture you see. Actually, he does. It's just that, nobody, when they're in if you've only seen a person one still photo, and then you see them moving around, they always look a little different. But you can tell that's him. All right, my church is a fishing pole and a six-pack. You know what, Bradley? It's okay. That's your relaxation. That's the place you go, and that's fine. But you know what? And I do believe this. Church is community. Church is not just getting away from it. Church is about community, first and foremost. Someone made a claim about the Bible, wouldn't surprise. Made that claim about the Bible, wouldn't. Well, yeah, of course not. At least in heaven with the Lord, living God, Almighty Father, Yahweh, and Lord Jesus Christ, Yahshua Emmanuel of Nazareth, and Lord, Holy Spirit, then anti-tricker that you never have back and knee pain again. Yes, that is true, but that's hopefully a ways off. Dude's Thought says, I can't agree with that comment, bro. Christ got mad at religious leaders too, but he cast demons out of people and told people to go and sin no more. Jesus hates hypocrisy, but sin is sin. Well, but here's the thing. And even first of all, casting out demons is different than hating on people, right? And in fact, the Bible even says, our battle is not with the person, but with powers and principalities. And so we need to stop focusing on the person. And in the modern context, think of it this way. If you are arguing with someone over, say, abortion, and you're arguing with someone who's pro-choice, your argument is not against the person who is pro-choice. Your argument is for protecting the lives of the unborn. It's about the issue, not the person giving you their counter-argument. But what we all tend to do, every single one of us, is attack that person. And that's what we really need to get away from. And I do this too. I'm guilty of it as much as the next guy, and I need to work on it my own self. But we need to focus on not attacking the individual, but rather attacking the concept, the principality and power behind that person. Is that your church in the background? On the screen there? Yes, that is the Experience Community Church. That is the church that I attend. And so I thought that would be apropos for today's show. Uninstall the programs that I know have the problems in reinstalling them. Okay, I must have missed something, but because the DLL problem solved with Origin and SimStreet. Gotcha. So I was like, what? Huh? Jesus hates sin in general, but I agree with Antrag. The only time the Bible describes Jesus as angry is when observing the hypocrisy of religious authorities. Yes. And in the writings of Paul, he's clear that we are not to call out sin in heathens or in non-believers. We are only to call out sin in our fellow believers. And so for someone to point the finger at a non-believer and call them a sinner and tell them they're going to hell, that is against the Word of God. That is, and in fact, being against the Word of God is a term that we refer to as blasphemy. A dude's thoughts. What verse and chapter verse says that, Antrag? We're supposed to spread the gospel. How can you do that if you don't speak on certain things? But you see, here's the thing. It's not that you say, oh, being gay is okay, right? You're not going to hear me say that, as particularly in a religious context, right? However, so it doesn't mean you endorse their lifestyle. It means you don't attack them for their lifestyle. However, you do try to introduce, you know what? You invite people to come to church. You invite people to get to know you, to understand where you come from, to see the joy in your life. What is different about you? But then you let, assuming that someone comes to a believing faith in Christ, they will learn this stuff. And they will come to understand this stuff. But we also have this tendency, and everybody does it, to pick out our favorite sins to condemn. You know what is one of the most insidious sins according to the Bible that nobody seems to give a crap about? Gossip. Well, we're all about talking about homosexuality. But boy, why don't we talk about gossip? Well, because Christians do it left and right. Darren says, my hometown La Crosse is a quaint drinking town with a fishing problem. I love that. My relaxation is honestly digging through records upon records and putting together stories about my dead ancestors and family. I can tell you really care about that, Black Adam, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Do dogs go to heaven? Sassy probably will, but I don't know, BIRDOPREY, what whether animals have any kind of soul or spiritual. I don't know. So my preferred drink is cider. My preferred drink for alcoholic beverages is, of course, a good single malt scotch. Sacrilegious it would be if I were to face God. I would probably demand a lot of answers. Well, you know what, the Fed, though, if you were seriously facing the creator of the universe, would you demand anything from? I'm just, regardless of where you stand. And I understand what you're saying, but it's easy to say that, to say, oh, well, if God had just told me this stuff, well, he's going to have to answer for, you know what? Then all of a sudden you're face to face with the creator of everything, and you're going to demand something from them. I would suggest reading the book of Job, honestly. God's answer to Job at the end of that book is what your answer would be if you demanded anything from him. John Araki sends $2, says, pray for Redneck and pray for Sassy. Absolutely. Redneck, obviously, there was a little bit of an incident involving Captain Redneck and Captain George and Captain Foley, all captains, interestingly enough. And I'm not going to get into details on it because that's not what this is about. But absolutely, and I'm going to tell you right now, what Captain George did, I agree with. I told him so. And I stand by his decision. However, I hope that Captain Redneck will come around, apologize or whatever, and we will be more than happy to welcome him back if he will sincerely refrain from what he did there. And that's all I'm going to say about it. And we're not going to turn this into a discussion on Captain Redneck. Cats go to heaven, Bird. Well, I don't know about that. Cats are kind of evil. And by the way, John, yes, this is Sunday morning, but I still do super chat rewards if you so choose. So let me know. Rather unconventional as a church, but then I come from experience in Orthodox churches. You know how they are. Yeah, I understand. All right, so let's see. Luke throws €5 in. Thank you so much, Luke. I do appreciate it. And says, is the Bible hate speech? Silly question to me. Short answer, the Abrahamic part, maybe, sort of, but I disagree. The Christian part, definitely not. Well, here's the funny thing. Is that and when I wrote the title of this live stream, is the Bible hate speech? Well, if hate speech is now defined as anybody disagreeing with the far left mantra of sexual preference, of physical excess, do whatever you want to do. If any type of speech against that lifestyle is hate speech, then yes, the Bible is hate speech. And at which point Google should just take down every Christian on YouTube and, fulfill the prophecy that the Bible said about how large institutions are going to treat Christians in the end times. So go ahead, Google, do your worst. However, I also would say that the Bible is actually a book of love, and it's like, you know what? Is it hate? For example, this is honestly where we've gotten as a society. A child wants to have ice cream for dinner every day. If the parent says no, that's hate. That's what we become. It is not healthy to have ice cream every day. But when mom or dad says no, that's hate speech. Now, it's an analogy, of course, but that's what we're talking about here. So the Bible says, you know what, you ought not do this, 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 and this. Well, we want to do it, so that's hate speech. No, it's not. It's just, these are and you know what? I don't understand all the rules of the Bible. Not going to pretend to, but that doesn't make it hate speech. Because if the ultimate goal of the Bible is to get people to get to heaven as opposed to hell, right? If that is the ultimate goal of the Bible, how is that hate? Luke says, Uber number 9. You got it, my friend. I don't even remember which one that is. Well, all right. Well, let's beam down to the planet. Energize, Mr. Scott.
Aye, Captain.
Welcome aboard the USS Discovery.
There's got to be some kind of other universe, right? Please, send me back. Oh my God, send me back. I beg you, no, send me back. Oh. Yep. Thank you, Luke. I do appreciate it. All humans are sometimes hot and short-fused, but the only exception is the baby Lord King Jesus Christ of Nazareth, when high free chose to come to earth to experience human life while still being the I Am. That is very true. But even Jesus got mad a couple of times, but he only got mad at religious leaders. All right, one of my strongest beliefs is anyone who doesn't believe in hell is probably going there. That's an interesting way to put it. Honestly, though, that's not the, and unfortunately, too many Christians focus on hell, the consequence of hell. It's not about hell. It's not about what is hell. It's not about how bad is hell. It's not. It's about God. It's about and wouldn't you regardless of whether hell, like there are conflicting theories about hell, right? Some people say hell is complete and utter oblivion, meaning that you are destroyed and you cease to exist. Some people feel that hell is some kind of eternal torture, the lakes of fire and stuff that we've seen a million times in popular culture. Some people think that hell is basically regular old existence just without God's presence, meaning basically a completely godless world. Now, regardless of what you think hell is, don't you think it would be better to be in paradise? And that's what the Bible is about. It's not about what is hell. It's not about whether, it's just about, here's where you would rather be. We know, and they do, FYI, dogs do go to heaven. Okay, I didn't know that, Bird, but you must be the theological expert that I am not. I think if Christians follow the tendency of the Pharisees, where we tend to clean the outside of the cup by focusing on specific sins instead of changing the heart. You are 100% right, John, and that is something that is a cancer in the church. It is a horrific cancer in the church. And that is why I attend this church right here, because they are an exception to that rule. And I cannot stand the hypocrisy that comes from the Christian church. It just drives me absolutely crazy. Peter says, sassy for the work she does, BIRDOPREY will go to heaven. I can't speak on that. My preferred drink at the moment, because I'm in the middle of a 2-week fast, is apple cider vinegar diluted in water. That sounds absolutely disgusting, Darren, but I know you are a heavy-duty faster, so you keep it up, my friend. Drucifer says, like when Stan Smith held a gun to God's head. You lost me there. BIRDOPREY says, I demand answers. Okay, 72A. Let's see, Toronto and alligators. Dogs go to dog heaven. Oh, is that how it works? Okay. Enter. Good to see everyone here. Now I have to get ready for work. All right, Wesley, you have a good one. BIRDOPREY says ban captains. Yes, we'll just ban all captains. Man, I'm behind in the chat today. You guys are going crazy, and I'm talking too much. I'm going to try to get caught up here. If we're talking booze, a nice ale works. I love Victoria bitters or Tooheys, not that Foster's nonsense. Well, I don't like beer. Black Adam says, to be honest, if I was facing God, I would say, why do you let your children get cancer? Why do you sit back and watch so much evil and hate in the world? Why don't you just show up and make everything good? That's what we in philosophy is called the problem of evil. And I actually, back when I was doing a lot of religious videos on my old channel, I did a video called The Problem with the Problem of Evil. And they're really, the problem of evil is an interesting one, but the answer to that is in the Bible. Read Genesis. It's right there. Cats already have one foot in the door of hell anyway, according to Keanu Reeves. That's true. Cats are evil. They're chaotic neutral. No, I think cats are evil. I would ask God why he allowed STD to be created. Yes, that's the greatest crime against humanity. Not Ryan Johnson says hello to you and everyone in the chat. Good to see you. Bird does not give a crap about free will. Of course you don't. You're a mafia leader. You don't believe in free will because you believe that you should be in control. But I've got faith of the heart. That's funny. Mrs. Antricker was talking to Corey earlier this week and talked to her about the difference in certain people's faiths. And Mrs. Antricker has faith of the heart, but I have faith of the mind, and those are two very different things. But that's something I may do a video about eventually. Is it healthy to drink beer every day? Do not know. I'm not a doctor. One of the most hate-filled people in the world I've ever met was my great-uncle's roommate, a vicar, and one of the kindest and sweetest people I met was my gay cousin and his husband. Well, and that's the thing, Black Adam. Being a Christian doesn't... being a Christian, meaning that going to church and claiming that you believe in this stuff and stuff, that doesn't make you a good person. Having a relationship with God should. If you are a Christian and you are a dick, there's something wrong. I'm just saying. There is a serious problem. Now, it's one thing, obviously you guys know that I joke around with people all the time, like calling Bird a mafia boss like I just did. However, Bird knows I'm joking. And I've told Bird on multiple occasions, and I'm sure he would back me up on this, that I said if I ever take it too far, you call me out on it and I will stop. And I say that to many of my friends because I don't want people to get the wrong idea. When I do my reviews and I say, F you, Ryan Johnson, I'm doing that for humor. I'm not doing it because I genuinely hate Ryan Johnson. I hate what he did to Star Wars, but I don't hate the man. I would love to sit down and talk to Ryan Johnson and ask him, what the heck were you thinking? So we have to, if you see a Christian who is cynical, who is hateful, who is just a mean-spirited person, I'm sorry, they don't have a relationship with Christ. They may go to church every week, but that doesn't mean they actually have a relationship with Christ. Can anyone understand the rules of the Bible or any holy book? And that's the problem. People over get into this is a term that we call, in churches we call legalism. Legalism is not Christianity. In fact, the only religion where legalism could be considered a real virtue is Judaism. Judaism is a religion of law. Christianity is not. And that's why when asked straight point blank, Christ said, here's what you got to do. Number one, you got to love God. Number two, you got to love your fellow man. If you do those two things, everything else is all about that. So it's not about following certain rules. It's about developing a relationship with God and loving your fellow man. It's the whole speech that spreads hate versus speech that you hate. That's an interesting way to put it, Luke. Mr. Miles says, enter. I don't agree with the analogy at all because parents are clearly real. There is no debate about parents being real. No, the point, if you're talking about, I think the thing about the kid being, wanting ice cream every day is hate speech. It's not, well, that's a difference, but it's not, it's the same basic, if the rule is X is not good for you, therefore don't do X. But I want to do X, therefore you hate me. And so now you could argue about whether or not God is real. I think God's reality is fairly obvious, but it's kind of funny. Corey put it in an interesting way that I know to the non-believer sounds stupid, but there's a certain level of truth in it, which is believing is seeing, as opposed to seeing is believing. That if you believe in the existence of a divine creator, then you can see him pretty much everywhere. The problem is that if you reject the concept out of hand, then, for example, you don't see the beauty in this in the same way that a believer does. You don't see the beauty of the universe in the way that the believer does. You don't see the incredible nature of life and evolution and all that stuff the way that the believer does. If your church wants to play my inspiring rendition of Faith of the Heart for the congregation, I give permission. Well, I don't have it queued up here, BIRDOPREY, or I would. Hopefully somebody grabbed that from your stream because I want to do something with it. I don't know about any holy book, but the commandments of the New Testament are very easy to understand. Well, like I said, John, there's really the primary commands are love God, love your neighbor. Once you get past that, once you start digging into the Bible and trying to develop a relationship with the divine, yes, you will try to do everything that the Bible suggests. You will try to avoid doing things that are bad and doing things that are good. However, it's not about checklist. It's not the good place where you have to score a certain amount of points to get to heaven. That's something that people really don't get. While they say, well, the wages of sin is death. That's true, but all sin is forgiven. All means all, and that's all means, which means all sin is forgiven. So forget about the checklist. Forget about the rules for a minute. Now, does that mean that you should just intentionally break the rules? Of course not. Because if you truly believe that someone was willing to sacrifice themselves for you and that person did so to pay the price for your sins, wouldn't you want to minimize your sins? Because, some people don't see it that way. They see it as free license to do whatever the hell they want. Quite frankly, I think that's a very dangerous theology. Hell is probably like Spawn depicted it, creepy clown and all. I kind of doubt it, but that would be interesting. Christianity is supposed to be be about following Christ, not just where we go when we die. That is very correct, John. It's about having a relationship with Christ at its core. Behaving to go to heaven is as bad to me as behaving to avoid hell. Both are selfish. Okay. But you know what? Doing things because you want a virtue signal is also selfish. People are selfish. However, if you understand what the concept of like the crucifixion, Christ already died on the cross for your sins, right? And assuming you accept that, and that's the big key, that's what changes a person, is the acceptance of that fact. Once you accept that fact, then you're naturally going to want to do whatever, he suggests. Now, it's not about, earning my way into heaven, because it's a free ticket to anybody that wants it. You want to go to heaven? Here's your ticket. It's free. It's absolutely free. Well, what do I need to do? All you need to do is accept it. And the ticket is the cross. How could someone go to hell if they never knew the teachings of Jesus? I mean, if evil ever managed to destroy all copies of the Bible and erase Christianity, then wouldn't all future generations be saved by default? That's an interesting question. One that I don't entirely know the answer to, Bird. However, it does seem like there are passages in the Bible that suggest that people that do not know the details of the Bible still know God, right? That they are still, and what the Bible kind of suggests is that if you are seeking God, you will find God, regardless of whether or not you have the book in front of you. Let's see. Fasting is a great thing to do. I knew to start fasting again. I was able to expel a demon with me by prayer and fasting. Very cool. Heaven without animals is not a place I want to go. I just hope we won't meet all the mosquitoes and wasps I killed. That would be bad. The only beer I like are pilsners, but domestic beers are usually lagers. Why are we talking about alcohol on a Sunday morning? Well, sacramental wine, I guess. Captain Cat says, hello, mate. And hello, guys. How you doing, Captain? If you think cats aren't evil, you've never had one. Very true, Resolute. Do you still have some of your old debates from your old channel? I think it'd be interesting to watch. I might have some of them. I really want to find the... and granted, he schooled me to death, but I wouldn't mind finding one where I sat down with Steve Delahanty. Black Adam says, check Discord. You guys in your frickin' Discord. I'm so far behind in the chat, and you want me to go to Discord. Oh, it's your helmet. Very cool. I'll show it. This was a birthday gift, correct? So there you go. There is the Halo helmet on the head of Black Adam. That is very cool, my friend. People used to drink beer daily. It was better than water. Well, and actually, you know, that's why people drink wine in the New Testament so much, is because it was better than water. The grapes actually acted as kind of a filtration system. I'm going to try to just do the chats addressed directly to me for a minute until I get caught up, because I know I'm way behind. Sorry about that, guys. The Fed Doc says, I would hardly say a mild distaste or disgust of Ruin Johnson could be remotely considered sinful. Well, it's not, but here's the thing. It's not Rian Johnson that I hate. It's what he did to Star Wars that I absolutely hate. All right. And that, in my opinion, is the right attitude. I hate the principality, the power, not the person. Kirk pointed out that humans aren't meant for paradise. Paradise is boring. We are meant to struggle, to strive, to achieve, to explore. Okay. But I think that that's a human instinct but that's also because developed in order to survive in this world in which we live. And I think that need to struggle will be gone post-resurrection. Andrew, if reincarnation was an option, I would ask to be reincarnated, but in my own family. That's cool, but resurrection and reincarnation, of course, very different concepts. And let's see. I meant your real church, the one on the screen. They have my permission. Oh, to use I don't think they'd want to use that. Their music is not on the same level as yours. That's how I'll put it. Like Tony Stark sacrificed himself for us, Anti-Tricker. Tony Stark's sacrifice was actually a very Christ-like moment. And I thought it was good. What I'm jealous... by the way, I think one of the best Christ-like sacrifices that I've ever seen, though, in film, and honestly, the absolute best, is Gran Torino. If you haven't seen Gran Torino, I'm not going to spoil it, but holy crap, there is a Jesus moment like no other Jesus moment in that movie, and it involves a Zippo lighter, and it's just incredible. What I'm jealous of, one day in the future, somebody is going to exist the asteroid belt and look on the face of the universe and all its beauty and power. I'm jealous of that too. I would love to be able to live in space and see it with my own eyes from that perspective. Yes. So I've been reading into this gamma radiation that Stark, Thanos, and Hulk went through. Yeah, it's the people around them should have gotten the gamma rays too, and that means that everyone, when the Hulk snapped, and Thor should have gotten a lot. That's true. So I guess that didn't happen. I bought that in GameStop. Oh, I thought for some reason I thought it was a birthday gift. I thought you said you got it as a birthday present. Let's see. And Luke says, you're a bit behind. I referred to how hate speech is perceived, objectively versus subjectively. It's objectively viewed as speech that spreads hate, or subjectively viewed as speech they hate. Blasphemy. You're right, but the thing is that based on the way that the far left progressives, like the people that run Google, are now, hate speech is no longer speech that spreads hate. It is simply speech that they hate. And I think that's an interesting way you put it, but that is exactly what it is. It is speech that they hate is hate speech now. So if, for example, this live stream will probably get demonetized, right? Because we're talking frankly about religious concepts, and they hate religion, therefore, bam. demonetized. Same thing, by the way, if I was just talking about conservative politics or something like that. They hate conservatism. And so that is hate speech in their mind, which is just wrong. And I will tell you, and so it looks like that's it for the ones that were addressed directly to me. So, okay. It's really, I would genuinely, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I would genuinely suspect whether or not Google itself is the Antichrist. Because, boy, there's a lot of interesting coincidental things about the description of the Antichrist and Google, including the fact that Google is a number. So that's, I think, an interesting fact. And Google does incredible things, and that the world just bows down before. And it's becoming increasingly more difficult to do any kind of commerce without going through Google. And Google has information on all of us, a scary amount of information. Google, and it's like, I don't, has it, because I understand the Bible, there's a lot of stuff, there's literal stuff and figurative stuff. Yeah, and Wesley beat me to the punch, but is the mark of the beast not a tattoo or a barcode, but a Google account? I don't know. I mean, that could be. Google isn't nearly as bad as Facebook. Well, keep in mind that I also think, and this is another thing, that if you look at Revelation, and I never really thought about this before this new Vox Adpocalypse thing, but if you look at the way that Revelation describes the beast with its 10 heads or the however many heads, and the 7 heads or 10 heads, I can't remember, and then the crowns and all that they could just be talking about big tech, Google, Facebook, Amazon, all that crap. So, and so BIRDOPREY says Facebook will not exist in 10 years. However, Google will, in his opinion. I don't know that Google will. Honestly, I think that if Google continue, well, it's possible, but will, if some of these lawsuits against Google continue, will Google be able to survive? Well, only if they change. And that's why that one congressman or senator from Missouri that I mentioned the other day, I think Hawley or something like that, I'm so supportive of his concept of removing Google's exemption from liability on publishing unless they demonstrate that their algorithm is politically neutral. I am all for that. No, the mark of the beast is the Borg. Oh, Wesley, except that the Borg are fictional. That's the problem. Harry Brown, anti-trigger with Michael Caine, very Gran Torino in the feel of the movie. I haven't seen it, but I do love me some Michael Caine. Is the internet as a whole end times problematic? I don't think so. It's just not something that they would have understood when writing the Bible. Would it not also be considered rather Christian to consider most of these Google, whatnot, and these other platforms to be wholly misguided? Well, I do believe there is the problem is that Google, and this is why it's interesting that Google itself could be evil in a sense, because Google is not a person. Google is a principality, a power. Google is not a person. And yet, Google acts with malice against a huge segment of the population. Peter says, if you like Gran Torino, you'd love Harry Brown. I will check it out. Yeah, I do. I love me some Gran Torino. That is an awesome movie. If you have not seen it, you absolutely owe it to yourself to see it. It is a beautiful, beautiful film. And the funny thing is that Gran Torino, if a typical Google employee would start watching Gran Torino, they probably turn it off after 10 minutes because of all the filthy hate speech coming out of Clint Eastwood's mouth. And yet, they would miss one of the most powerful stories about his redemption and everything. It really is It's a beautiful thing. So the Bible and you talking about is not the problem, but it's the Bible and you talking about it is not the problem, but it's corrupted. Not sure what you mean. Are you saying the Bible is corrupted, I'm corrupted, or someone else is corrupted? You kind of lost me on that basket. Richie says corporations are people too. Haven't you heard? Well, that's from a legal perspective. I understand that, but what I'm talking about is when I say personhood. Now, Google is not going to heaven, right? Google is not a human being. Gran Torino is a beautiful film. It is. Eastwood Ravine. Okay. I believe there is a demonic spirit that is a principality over all media. I wouldn't say all media, but I mean, yeah. Also, joining the board is not a willing act. Everyone using Google is a willing act. Quick, everyone switch to Bing, or I think you mean Bing or something. Well, the problem is I don't think that you're going to get much better with Bing or Yahoo or anybody else. Clint's relationship with his neighbor. Yes, Pete, it is beautiful to watch that evolve through the film. Because at the beginning of the film, Clint is a dick. You kind of understand why he's a dick, but he's a dick. And the way that they go through his arc through the story is so beautiful. To where he gives one of the most Christ-like sacrifices at the end of the film that I've ever seen in any film. So they'd react the same way to Blazing Saddles. You're right. Blazing Saddles, I mean, the way Mel Brooks, I'm not a huge Mel Brooks fan, but but Blazing Saddles is a beautifully crafted film, taking racism and just nailing it. Absolutely nailing it. Great job with it. Bass says, no, you missed my first message. The subject is corrupted by the far left and far right and left. You're right. You are absolutely right then. I think you missed a message of mine. Yeah, I missed a bunch because honestly, when the chat gets behind, what I do is I only read the ones that say @anti-trekker in them. That way I can get caught up because sometimes you guys are talking to each other and I don't know until I start reading the message whether or not you're, and so, if you really want me to read it, make sure you put @anti-trekker in the message. And you got to put it in correctly. If you put @AT or something, it will not highlight on my screen. I think Bing is a subsidiary of Google. Actually, Bing is Microsoft, I believe. Michael Caine is to his neighbors at the start too. Oh, okay. I haven't seen that, so I don't know. Doesn't Bing use Google to get search results? That would be funny. Sorry about bad spelling, Wesley. I am the last person who's going to criticize someone about spelling. Darren says, Antrekker, you couldn't have made Blazing Saddles 2 years after it came out. You're probably right. It was a bold movie, even for its day. But yeah, today it simply could not be produced. Thomas says, we are not in God's realm. We are all in Satan's realms, and Christians are the resistance, and we are losing the war. Once you get that, we can focus on saving souls and spreading the truth of the Bible. Well, I kind of disagree with you on bits of that. I don't think this is Satan's realm. I think that Satan has a lot of influence. However, this is an interesting thing, and this is something that this guy here, Corey, mentioned that I never thought about before when he was teaching Revelation not too long ago. Christians are going to lose, ultimately. That eventually every Christian will be wiped off the face of the planet. And that is when the end times will actually happen. That is when the wrath of God would be spilled onto the planet, after the Christians are wiped out. So it's a bad thing, but it's a good thing. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens at that point. Except that, well, hopefully none of us will actually see it. Blazing Saddles, you forgot Candygram guy, Anti-Trekker, disabled us too. I'm not sure I agree, though, that Eastwood's death in Gran Torino was Christ-like. He didn't die for anyone's sins. No, he died for others. Keep in mind, it's not just the fact that Christ died for our sins. It's that he died for us. He didn't die for anything for himself. He died so that we might live. And at the end, and without any spoilers, Clint Eastwood's character in Gran Torino died so that others would live. I'm a big poop. I love poop, poop, poop. Please send me poop. Bird, are you okay? Somebody else get... I think Bird's having a stroke or something. Somebody get over to Bird's house and check on him. You laugh about being using Google to get their search results, but they got busted for exactly that years ago. I didn't know that. That's funny. I don't use Bing, so I wouldn't know. In my sister's class, a guy... And by the way, here's an interesting thing. You want to talk about filters. I will show you. Hopefully it'll duplicate. So when I was looking for this background we see on the screen, the cross and the sunset and everything. I think it's a beautiful picture. So here's what I did. I went to Google and I typed in the word God, and then I went to images. Now it's funny. Oh, it's because I did a previous search. So this is not what I got before. This is like, this is funny because this is the, I had to change it to like Christian God or something like that. Let me see. Yeah, that's weird. I was getting a bunch of this crap. Oh, I remember what it is. I put in, let me go back to Google. That's not how I put in God wallpaper. And then went to images. And it's all Krishna. Yeah, no filtering going on there. Nothing. Whatever. All right. Let's see. Black, in my sister's class, a guy was talking about new racism and how it's okay. He put up an article that was clearly racist, but he blanked out the people it was against and shocked the class when it was whites. That's an interesting way to do it, Black Adam. That really is. By that metrics, most hero deaths are Christ-like then. Well, in effect, that's one of the reasons, honestly, Mr. Miles, that we gravitate towards heroes that sacrifice themselves for others. You're absolutely right. Many heroes' deaths are Christ-like. If the person is nobly sacrificing themselves for a greater good to save humanity as a whole or a larger group, then yes, that is a Christ-like death. And when movies do that, that's one of the reasons it's such a powerful tool in storytelling. Is the sacrificial death is a wonderful storytelling tool. And it all goes back to the cross, the ultimate sacrificial death. One of the things I've always found ironic is how people are upset of the whole dystopian grim future media in Western societies. Meanwhile, Bible predicts a grim future that would fit. Yeah, in a way, you're right. Yes, but the difference is, and actually, here's the thing: there will be, for at least some period of time, a post-Christian world. And if you were making a movie set in that world, I think it would be a dystopian future. Most Christians I know are looking forward to the end times. They want Armageddon. I find that disturbing. I do too. I genuinely do. Because here's the thing. I want, and I want the same thing. And I try to align myself with what God wants. But genuinely in my heart, I don't want people to go to hell, right? I don't want that to happen. And neither does God, if you read the Bible. And so I want Armageddon to be put off as far as possible to try and convince as many people to accept the free gift so that they don't go to hell. And so, but am I looking forward to people suffering and dying and all? No, heck no. I don't want that to happen, but I understand why it may be necessary. Andrew, so what's with all the negativity? It's coming from the secularization of the world or quite... is it coming from the secularization of the world or quite the opposite? With all that negativity, I need a little more definition on that, Luke. What is it with all that negativity? You got to define that for me. Are you talking about negativity from me personally, or are you talking about just negativity in the world? Peter Quinn says, where's Thor? Well, he's currently with the Guardians of the Galaxy. And where's Apollo? He died, actually, at the hands of Captain Kirk. Alexa, who is Jesus Christ? Where is I can't pronounce that one, Richie. Tony Stark had a Christ-like death in Endgame. I agree. Wait, are you saying I'm attracted to hero deaths because it's Christ-like? Let's reverse that. Christ's death was hero-like. Sorry, Mr. Miles. It's an influence. It's a subconscious one but in Western civilization, the Christian story has influenced our civilization on more levels than most people can even fathom. And don't feel bad. Just it's just a fact. That your past, just like you may not be a Christian, but that doesn't mean you weren't influenced by Christian beliefs. Christians are also told not to worry about the end times. The Bible says, "Be comforted." I don't worry about the end times, but I just assume that that it be as far off as possible. Got to remind myself I'm surrounded by Christians right now. Got to behave. No, you don't have to behave, Mr. Miles. We are a free and open group. And as Captain Redneck actually just followed up, welcome Captain Redneck, and said, just be yourself. You are, and that's the thing. I'd rather have a frank discussion with people who don't believe than a sugar-coated discussion. And it's okay, man. If you disagree, that's fine. And we've disagreed on stuff before. You and I have had, Mr. Miles, you and I have had private Skype conversations. We've disagreed on stuff like this. It's okay. Andrew, read the previous comment to understand the last. All right, let me go back. One of the things I always found ironic is how people are upset at the whole dystopian grim future. Oh, so you're talking about, the negativity of the dystopian future, is that coming from the secularization or quite the opposite? I think the dystopian future in storytelling is from the secularization. I do. I think that there's a certain pessimism that comes with secular thinking. A certain thought, for example, it's a common secular thought that humans are a blight on this planet. Right, that if there were just no people, this planet would be paradise. Right, that humans are the cause of every problem. That humans are basically just are just horrible. However, then they point the finger at Christians and say how wrong it is that Christians say we're all a bunch of sinners. Well, you're saying the same thing. You're just saying it in a different way. But whatever. The difference is that Christians believe that there is something higher that is ultimately in control, that will ultimately set things right. Where if there is no God, I'm sorry, but the secularist dystopian idea of society is probably exactly right. Couldn't the Federation be a post-Christian world? There are very few Christians left. Not in TOS. And so I'm going to be doing a video on that, Black Adam, because in TOS, Christianity is all over the place. And so there are plenty of direct references to Christianity in TOS. However, in TNG, it's that you could say is a post-Christian world, a post-Christian utopian world, which I don't think is even possible. I think it would be a post-Christian dystopian world is what we're heading towards. Captain Redneck is blowing a kiss at Mr. Miles, which is kind of weird. Luke's, I already read that. The Tree Rock Creations, good to see you, my friend, says end times equals Salmon and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah is what you mean, I'm sure. All over again. History repeats itself. In a sense, you're absolutely right. So it's a Christ-like death, not a hero's death. Christ did it first. Well, there you go. So, yeah. And let's see. Wait a second. You're Christians unsubbing. Oh, well, there we go. Luke says, Andrew, I disagree with your vision of the Christian story. No matter how you view God, you cannot deny the stuff that Christians just lifted off prior mythologies. Christ is not unique as a story. Well, Luke, let me ask you something. Now, is the first time there was ever a story of an attack against the United States and a president rises up and stands in the rubble of what's left of the attack and gives an inspirational speech, and then we go to war? It's the first time that ever happened in a story when George W. Bush did that after 9/11? No. It's been told in stories before. That doesn't mean that George Bush didn't exist. That's how I would answer that. Apollo did not die at the hands of Kirk. He died from a broken heart. That's true. That's true. They all rejected him, including those women, and left the other Greek gods. Fair enough. I stand corrected, Dude's Thoughts. And I should have said that because I actually watched that episode just a few days ago. Captain Redneck says, hate speech doesn't exist. At least in the U.S., it's not recognized by any law. You're 100% right about that, Captain Redneck, that hate speech is actually, and the Supreme Court said as recently as 2017, that hate speech is protected speech. However, hate speech does exist in the minds and hearts of people that run large corporations like Google, and therefore they feel like they need to censor it despite the fact that it doesn't really exist. Now, I understand if they want to specifically, like, because that was the purpose of this whole Vox Adpocalypse, was to get rid of white supremacy and stuff like that. If they want to get rid of genuine white supremacist channels, I have no problem with that. I really don't. If they put in their terms of service, hey, you cannot be a racist on this channel, and here's what racism is. Racism is the, stating that one genetic group or race is superior to another. If you advocate that position, you are gone. Fine. Absolutely. However, that doesn't mean that if I call Barack Obama a failed president, that's racist. It just means that if I start saying that Group A is better than Group B, that is racist. And so A, they need to be clear on what their policy is, and then B, they need to enact it fairly and without bias or prejudice, which they don't do. Peter says, arguments made friendships better, Captain Redneck. I've even punched him, and he's still my friend, but that wasn't an argument. I agree. I think arguments among friends can be very healthy. I will tell you, I've had some knockdown, drag-out fights with Lore Reloaded. And I've had some serious fights with other people, and that's all right. I've had fights with Mrs. Anti-Trekker. Not that many, but we have fought. All Marvel movies are about fighting over objects, materialism. Well, it's actually that the heroes are rising to stop the villains from using particular objects in an evil plan. I don't think it's just about materialism. Yeah, he snapped my Jaffa cake chain that was made and given to me by a female friend. That sucks. There's even a smattering of Christianity in DS9. I don't remember that, but I'll believe you, Mr. Lundell, but I don't remember that. They point the fingers at Christians because they offer a way out. Well, yeah. Darren says, I often wonder if there aren't still Christians in the TNG era, we just didn't... If there aren't still Christians in the TNG era, we just don't see them on Picard's ship. Religion was a superstition to be surpassed, and Starfleet wasn't the military. Well, yeah, I think that Picard's ship is just the USS living in a bubble. And DS9, Cisco's dad quotes the Bible. Okay, I didn't remember that, but I'd have to go back and see that. That's cool. So I whacked him one. We were drinking heavily. That sounded bad, Peter. We were drinking heavily, and our other two mates were with us. He said, well, he should have expected that. There are even Christian-like references in The Way to Eden, albeit from a very hippie perspective. That's true. Read the myth of Osiris. Point made. Okay. That's, you know what, I understand what you're saying, Luke, and a lot of people have said, oh, the Bible is just borrowing stuff from other myths. Fine, you're entitled to believe that. Or you could believe that there was an actual person that walked around some 2,000 years ago, and he did some incredible things, so much so that his followers were perfectly willing to die rather than say he was not the real deal. Now, I'm sorry. I would not, and just being honest here for a second, assuming that I was not, forget about Christianity for a minute. We're in a world where Christianity never existed. And some guy shows up with this fake, hey guys, we're going to make up a religion, right? So we'll just say this guy's name is M. Sam Cupboard. And M. Sam Cupboard makes up a fake religion, and I'm one of the 12 people that's one of the insiders helping him develop this fake religion, and M. Sam Hubbard and the rest of us are doing this. But then M. Sam Hubbard gets caught and executed, and then they grab me and they say, we're going to kill you if you don't denounce M. Sam Hubbard's teachings. I am going to denounce M. Sam Hubbard's teachings at that moment. Why? Because I know they're fake. I don't get anything by being executed. So I'm going to, But the early Christians were all perfectly willing. The witnesses of Christ himself were perfectly willing to be executed rather than denounce that. I find that interesting. Apparently, I'm not woke. Of course not. Or awake. Okay. If copyright laws existed by then, Jesus would be sued as heck. I understand what you're saying, Luke, but if it actually happened, it doesn't matter if it's similar to a fictional story. There have been plenty of events that have taken place that have been similar to fictional stories from the past. I already mentioned one, George Bush standing on the rubble of 9/11. There have been plenty of stories where the President of the United States stands on the rubble of something destroyed and gives an inspirational speech. And yet, we don't think George Bush was fake. How long am I banned from your Discord, Anti-Drinker Forever? I did not ban you, Captain Redneck. That was Captain George's call. However, I will tell you this. From what I understand, and I mentioned this earlier in the live stream, here's all I know. I know that you got into it with another person, and it got personal. That you made some below-the-belt comments about other people in that person's family that were completely inappropriate, and that's why Captain George ended up kicking you. If you are willing to apologize to said person for said comments and refrain from that level of insult in the future, I'm sure that we can arrange to get you back on the Discord server, because I know that you have been a driving force in the Discord server. But come on, man, you went far on that one. But that is something ultimately I would have to talk to Captain George about, and you would have to make amends with that person. And I know, by the way, I got a message from that person who did specifically say that if you were to apologize, he'd be more than willing to accept it. So that's where that is, Captain Redneck. Wesley says, Enter, I have to agree with Luke. The word of God is from the beginning of time. Everything in history is similar to the Christ, a copy of the devil to fool people. Well, Wesley, and I understand where Luke's coming from. It's like, but here's the thing. Similarities how many times, let me ask you this. Were the Nazis fake? Because the Nazis were not the first regime to suddenly come to power and try to expand out and rule the world. Right? That's happened several times in history. Doesn't mean the Nazis didn't exist. It just, and shoot, I just got demonetized because I said what, the National Socialists didn't exist. No, they existed. They just did something that people have done before. But, whatever. Answering it, it's funny how you keep denying it while admitting it could be prophetic argument on the flip side. I never said that, Luke. I think you're putting words in my mouth, because I didn't deny that there are similarities between certain myths and the story of Christ, and I also didn't use the prophetic argument, although Wesley did. Now, I think that there is some possibility to the prophetic argument, but there's also some possibility. For example, you could argue, okay, there's a great flood story in many myths, right? What if there actually was a great flood? Hypothetically, for a second, there actually was a great flood. It would stand to reason that people all over the world would talk about it. And you know what? It also would stand to reason that there would be variations in that story. And so just because there are similarities doesn't mean that the biblical account is not true. Likewise, where you talk about, with Christ's thing, yes, there are prophecies that are thousands of years prior to Christ that predicted many of the things that would happen to Christ. And if those prophecies got out, and which they were public information, at least in Jewish culture, everybody knew about it, and those spread to other cultures, and other cultures then spread it to other cultures. And have you ever played the telephone game where things constantly change? And so now we have the story of someone else that did something like Osiris. And so somebody puts it down as Osiris and then Christ comes along at the appointed time and fulfills those prophecies, and you say, see, it's just a copy of Osiris. So I don't think that just having similarities in different ancient concepts means that one or the other is false. I don't think that's evidence either way. The only thing that really means is that people had a similar idea. And Trigger, so would you agree with the notion that the Bible is but the best deduction of humanity towards the will of God and the path to heaven, and even then it has a flaw? Not exactly the Fed. I do think that the Bible is the inspired word of God. Now, does that mean that the Bible in its modern translation is 100% flawless? It's harder to say because we don't have the original manuscripts. That would be very helpful if we did. But I do think the message is still there. And let me see, where was I? Because I'm way the heck behind now. Freedom of speech comes with personal responsibilities too, Anti-Tracker. Well, that's true, but freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from insult. It doesn't mean freedom from offense. The only speech that is not truly free is things where, like, inciting violence in others, or doing things that are inherently dangerous, such as crying fire in a crowded theater. Those are illegal. However, if you want to voice an opinion that is ugly and hateful and wrong, that's protected by the United States Constitution. If you're not in the United States, well, whatever rules you have, you got to go by. Dude says, Andrea, the problem is they don't have consistent rules and even lie at times. They deleted on my videos and said I advocated violence against women, and nothing of the sort was in the video. Well, that is a problem, and believe me, I've been fighting Google for quite some time now on some of my stuff as well. When you had fights with Mrs. Anti-Trigger, that's when you discovered what sad foot tastes like. You are 100% right, Black Adam. And I've learned. I'm still learning, but I'm trying to get into my head. It's just not worth trying to fight her. Hopefully, Mrs. Anti-Trigger won all the arguments for the sake of your health. Oh, of course she did. You only have fights with Mrs. Anti-Trigger because making up is so much fun. Well, there is that. All right, I'm way behind here. It does exist. If you only talk hate, racism, threats, etc., it's hate speech. It's the definition of what hate is. And what facts are in the speech defines a group if they don't think it's hate speech. When you say it exists, I mean, do people speak with hate? Yes. Is hate speech a crime? Not in the United States. Is hate speech protected by the First Amendment? Yes, in the United States. And so for a corporation to then, and here's the problem, is that Google is where a huge, like 90% of web searches go through Google, right? YouTube is by far the lion's share of video streaming online. And so Google controls the information. And so if they start censoring certain viewpoints, now Google is trying to change society to mold it into their view. And, again, that's kind of similar to what the Antichrist was trying to do, wasn't it? I imagine you'll like how SG1 handles Christianity. They barely even touch on it for the most part, though, which I like. I honestly don't think that you have to throw Jesus into every freaking story, right? I don't. However, the thing is that even when Jesus was preaching, and if you look at his teachings, he very rarely used religion in his stories. Jesus taught through a system called parables. Parables is is just fiction, right? Parables is a fictional story with a spiritual point to it, right? So when he talks about the Good Samaritan, when he talks about the sowing seeds on different types of ground and stuff, those types of stories aren't inherently religious, but they teach a religious point. And so not every story has to be about God, but every story should have a moral compass. When Cisco and Cassidy Yates were planning their wedding, she wanted a minister to perform at the wedding, and Cisco wanted another Starfleet officer. I remember that. I do remember that. Me as a Burnham follower come freely to this group. Well, Joseph, as a Burnham follower, then, well, that's a whole other thing. All the myths of other gods are devil-made copies of Planet God. it's interesting. I think some of them are man-made. Not all are devil-made. And we underestimate the evil intent of humans sometimes. If you dig into it, the stories of Osiris and Horus are very different than the stories of Jesus. They aren't even close to being the same. I am not an expert on Osiris or Horus, so I couldn't comment on that fairly. I was just going basically by Luke's assertion. I'm assuming that they are very, very similar. I may do a video on it, but I don't know, because Luke mentions Osiris as being, oh, that's the one. So I'll check it out. Black Adam. Long ago, there was a very intelligent and wise man who walked around teaching people who call a hip honey. What's the name of that guy who owns the video store? Okay. The cross isn't even Christian. No, it was a Roman form of execution. Is that Hubbard from the hypothetical engineerologist church? Yes. Let me put it this way. What we deem as mythology today was religion before. What you deem as fiction now is used to be very respected beliefs of the superpowers of the past. That's an interesting statement, Luke. And I don't know. As far as, I didn't live in ancient Rome. I don't know how seriously they took the Roman and Greek gods and stuff. However, just because they believed it doesn't mean it's true. And it also, just because they believed it, doesn't mean it's false. However, I happen to believe it's false because I think polytheism breaks down from a logical perspective. Monotheism is the only type of spirituality that I think makes any kind of sense, because you always have to go back to the one. Antrigger, who do people only say 12 apostles when there were a lot more apostles than 12? Those 12 were the most loyal and stayed when the others abandoned Jesus. Well, yeah, the 12 were Jesus's small group. They were his inner circle, if you will. Obviously, there were a lot more than 12 apostles. And Redneck says, okay, I'll apologize to Foley as soon as he apologizes to me. I was not privy to the entire conversation, Captain Redneck. I would say reach out to Foley and... but and I think Captain, that what you said crossed the line with that whole thing with his wife. I haven't caught up with the gossip yet, Tricker and Catherine. I'm trying not to talk gossip too much here. That's not what this channel is about. And let's see. Now, thousands of years later, smaller country that used to be on the fringe of those superpowers holds stark similarities to their beliefs. Oh, spoiler, they lived there for a while. But the funny thing is all those other beliefs kind of faded away. And so, it's not like there are still people following the Greco-Roman gods. And so, yeah. And let me see. I'm not, let's see. Now attacking Luke. Hey, Luke, I still like you, just disagree with you. Well, hey, that's okay. We can all have genuine disagreements. That's okay. We just need to not be complete asses about it. Isn't that the whole point of Exodus, to leave Egypt and reach Israel? I'm not comparing an account of fiction. I'm comparing two texts that are held as accounts. I'm not sure exactly what you're comparing Exodus to. However, the whole point of Exodus to leave Egypt and reach Israel, well, the point of Exodus was that the Jews were in bondage and God wanted to free them. And so there is that element in it, but it's not just, oh, we're leaving here and going here. That's a gross oversimplification of it. The Christian God showed up late to the party. God admitted it with the first commandment. Right, off to bed. Tomorrow's work. Quite enjoyed the stream, Trigger. Hope he didn't come off too aggressive. No worries, the Fed. You take care of yourself. And have a common heritage. Okay. How is Mrs. Anti-Checker? She's doing all right. She's actually downstairs right now, probably watching this stream and shaking her head at what an idiot I am. Abby Olace throws $5 into the chat. Thank you so much. I love these Sunday morning chats. While no longer a practicing Christian, I enjoy the discussion. Blessed be and have a great day. Love to your family. Thank you, Abby. I truly, truly appreciate that. But one came before the other. Okay. And fellow nerds, greetings and salutations. Hey, Shomer, how you doing? Yosef throws €2 into the chat and says, well, will I go to hell for watching disco repeatedly? Good question. Actually, I don't think that your enjoyment or hatred of Star Trek Discovery is a factor in going to heaven or hell. All right, and Darren says, hey, Trigger, you know what I hate? Presumptive clickbaity titles on videos like Sasquatch encounters you probably never heard of or 10 things you didn't know about Godzilla. I hate those as well. Captain Redneck puts it in the chat. Dear Captain Foley, I owe you an apology for my crappy comments on Discord. I'm sorry you had to suffer from my drunkenness. I hope you will be able to forgive me. I am terribly sorry. That was a very, very kind apology, Captain Redneck, and I am going to take a moment here and clip that. So I'm going to send it to Captain Foley right now, because I want him to, obviously, if he doesn't see it, he can't know that you actually apologize, and I don't think he's here right now. Oh, come on. Stupid computer wants to fight me right now. Why is the tool not popping up? Bear with me, guys. Sorry. What the heck is it doing? All right, let's... Sometimes this stupid... Scratch... That's not it, is it? No. Oh, that'll work. All right. And... All right, so step 1 is done. I grabbed a quick snip of your comment. And now, let me go to Captain Foley. And send it to him. All right. So I did send that to him, Captain Redneck, but I got to wait for him to respond. And then we'll talk to Captain George. So Bass says, switch to PC, easy to talk, respond. It's not a crime if you're right there, but like a decent group with far left, far right abuse the system, Google, Twitter, etc. One of two. And then 2 of 2. Need to respond to them, and now damned if you do, damned if you don't. That is unfortunately very true. Where are you in SG-1 story so far? Who's the big threat? The big threat is still Anubis. I haven't watched much lately because of my back, but I'm looking forward to getting back into that once the pain is under control. Joseph, they'd offer you a job in hell if you watch STD repeatedly. There'd be nothing down there to terrify you. There you go. Joseph will be an apprentice demon in hell, and he'll be running the Star Trek Discovery viewing room. And so, let's see. You'll be doing videos on Egyptian gods, anti-Trekker, Stargate. Well, Stargate I don't consider the same as, obviously, the ancient mythology, but yeah. Antrigger, look into it if you have time. Osiris story and Jesus story, very different. I will, Captain Redneck. I genuinely will. I'll probably do a video on it because, Luke has got me interested in it now. But I don't want to speak from ignorance. Did Christ ever directly claim to be the sole Son of God by understanding he was referring to all people are the children of God? Yes, he did call himself the Son of God. Repeatedly. He also, now it's kind of interesting because while other people would say, you are divine, you are the Christ and all that, and Christ would basically say, yes, you are right. And so Corey, our pastor, puts it that he's a little sassy at times, right? That's people will be like, yes, you are the God, you are Christ, you are the Son of the Holy One. And he'd be like, yep, that's right. And that's honestly in the Bible over and over. The cross was originally a Babylonian method of execution that the Romans borrowed for administration of justice. I didn't know that, but I'm not a big historian, I will admit. And let's see. No, Osiris is not. Whoa, and there goes the chat again. Sorry. Go back. No, Osiris is not the one. That's the beauty of syncretism and its ability to recycle old myths into the new ones. Besides, your take on polytheism seems to forget the complex interactions. No, I'm simply saying that polytheism is illogical. I think that you and all Christians should be free to talk about it like you want, but sadly, we live in for against world where they need to choose a side: pro LGBTQ, free speech, or anti. Exactly, and the thing is, I'm not anti LGBTQ or whatever they want to call themselves. I'm not. But you know what? That's not a lifestyle that I would endorse. But if that's what you want to do, knock yourself out. 12 disciples, lots of apostles, including Paul. The 12 disciples, like I said, the 12 were the key, the leaders, if you will, of Christ's followers, the 12 that we know. Actually, the 11, and then the 12th was adopted into the fold after Judas left. Between the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the whole sphere of angels, demons, and saints. You're trying to argue that Christianity is polytheistic. You're actually barking up the wrong tree. Because first of all, angels, demons, and saints. Well, let's get into that. Saints are nothing. They're just people. All right? There's nothing special about a saint except saying that that's a person who is particularly righteous. Angels and demons are not gods. They are beings that, in my opinion, what I've called them before is hyper tridimensional beings. They are simply beings that can exist on more than 3 spatial dimensional planes, and that's why they can be difficult to perceive at times, but they can obviously cross into our plane of existence, as we've seen in the Bible. As far as Father, Son, Holy Spirit, well, they are all one and the same as far as personhood. So they are one being, 3 different manifestations. And that's a much more complicated story to talk about, but I already talked about my personal theories on the whole Trinity thing. Tree Rock says, in this world, no one owns anything. No one even owns their own soul. However, in the afterlife, if you believe Jesus, Son of God, not only will you have everlasting life, people will have treasure in heaven, things that will last forever. Can you imagine? Well, yes, but one thing that I would caution you about, it's not believing Jesus is the Son of God. In fact, the Bible warns against that, because even the demons in hell know that Jesus is the Son of God. So belief in and of itself is not enough. It's acceptance of what he did for you. And if you truly accept that, and this is the key, people say, well, sure, I accept it, therefore I'm good, right? Well, you have to mean it. You have to actually contemplate the idea of what he did for you, accept and believe that will change your life. You cannot walk away from a genuine belief that cross was where Christ was tortured and strung up for 9 hours or something for you. Once that sinks in, it should change your attitude on some things. Let's see. In this world, no one... Oh, I already read that. Some people do, in fact, worship the Greek gods. I know people worship Nike. Well, people worship corporations today. They truly do. They also worship money today. They also worship political parties today. There are a lot of people that bow down before the almighty Democrats or the almighty Republicans. That is absolute fact. They don't call it worship, of course. But watch some of these rallies that you see with politicians and tell me that's not worship. And tell me that the politicians in question aren't feeding off the praises and all that from their followers. People have I already read that. All right, let me go back. I know people who worship the almighty dollar. Absolutely. I wonder if Ed Trigger will watch up on the chat. You mean catch up? Probably not. I'm working on it. In heaven, I won't need to maintain my house anymore. Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Luke, on the Exodus Part 1, I was making connections between Judeo-Christian stories and Egyptian stories, making a geographic link. Jews lived in Egypt for centuries. Okay, well, that could explain some of the similarities in that, for example, if some of the Egyptian myths were based on what happened during Exodus. All right? Just saying. Do you know the date that Exodus took place? Do you really think that it was, and the thing is that if Exodus is factual, if that actually happened, I could see it definitely spurring various myths from the Egyptian side of things. And would those myths be 100% accurate? Probably not, because most of the eyewitnesses are dead, died in the events. BIRDOPREY says, expert at work. Not sure what you mean there. Love the planets in the background. Where did you get them? They are so cool. Oh, these little guys, they came from Donald Carlson, and they are really, really cool. Each one of them is a globe inside of a plastic sphere, and you can see and it's suspended in a liquid so that no matter what I do, it stays relatively straight. And so, yeah, these things are freaking awesome. And of course, when exposed to direct light, if I was holding perfectly still, you can see it will slowly revolve on its axis. They actually have some kind of magnetic and solar powered thing in there that makes them spin. Which I don't know all the physics behind that, but it's pretty awesome. Captain Redneck, alcohol and social media don't mix. That can be true. I've made that mistake. Love the I already read that. The Fed throws another 5 fake Australian dollars in. Thank you, Fed. No comment, just throwing the money at me. I appreciate that. I truly do. Captain Redneck said, I reckon not. It's funny because I know Captain Redneck in his heart is a good guy. I truly do. And I did not like what happened. I don't like when that kind of ugliness comes up. But I have to allow for, and Captain George, I think, made the right call, but I'm also hoping that we can mend these fences. I truly do. So I did, in fact, send the snip of what you said earlier, Captain Redneck, to Captain Foley, and I assume he's still in bed or something, but I haven't seen a response yet. But when I get one, I will forward that on to Captain George. And so bear with me, Captain Redneck. I'm there. Andrew, I believe that we all have been deeply tricked into believing at least one lie is truth. The question is, what one thing is the one lie? I agree. And by the way, something that I talk about frequently, and this is where Christians need to be a little more humble than they generally are. Nobody is 100% right. Not one human being is 100% right. So that, do not think that everything that you believe is 100% true. If you're not willing to admit that you could be wrong about something, you've already lost, in my opinion. If you're not open to learning the truth, then you're putting yourself in God's place. And I am not going to do that. So I'm willing to be educated. I am willing to be corrected. And I want to be educated and corrected because I want to know the ultimate truth. And if that truth ends up being there is no God, so be it. However, so far, and I'll tell you, I was a hardcore atheist for years. I was the kind of atheist that was mocking Christians and talking about how stupid they are. So, and I wasn't convinced by some clever argument. I was convinced by myself. By examining what I considered, just examining the universe as a whole, honestly. And BIRDOPREY puts a link to the spinning planets on Amazon. Thank you, Bird. I know this. Let me try to get caught up because, man, I'm like 10 minutes behind. No, Egyptian myths are thousands of years older than anything Exodus related. Here's the problem with that, Luke. You do realize that Exodus existed in the oral tradition of the Jews long before it was written down. And so I don't know that you can set an exact timeline. But like I said, I'll if you want to compare it to Osiris, that was your main thing. I will do a comparison. If you want to compare Exodus to something, I can't read every myth ever, Luke. And I know that there are plenty of atheist websites that'll just say, oh, this is the same as this, and this is the same as this. Well, you give me one to work with, I'll work with it. And so I'm always wrong. At least that's what my wife tells me. Not Ryan Johnson. If your wife is telling you you're always wrong, you're always wrong. /.-121 throws a pound 99 in there. Thank you so much. Where's my mofo spanner? Where's my mofo spanner gone? I don't know, Slash. Where did your mofo spanner go? I genuinely don't know. So let's see. It's not the Jews, it's the Israelite. I say, Schroner, I think the flood is from the close of the last ice age. Some evidence suggests North Africa and Europe did flood. It's not the Jews, it's the Israelites. Jews are only from Judea. Fair enough. Well, and I know we kind of use the terms interchangeably because, you know, those the Jewish faith in the Israel is and the nation of Israel. The Israelites are all descendants of Israel, who used to be named Jacob, whose name was changed after he wrestled with God. And that's but that is a people. And Jericho, did you become a Star Trek fan before or after becoming a Christian? Long before. I was a Star Trek fan since I was literally 1 year old. That is not an exaggeration. Captain Redneck says, Osiris is murdered, his body torn to shreds, reincarnated later, and roamed the underworld, exactly like Jesus. That does sound a little different. There is an archaeological evidence that the Hebrews did in fact live in a territory controlled by Egypt at one time. That is true. I don't know all the details of it, but I did know that. Do you know how old Egyptian religion is, Antrigger? It's older than the invention of writing itself. Well, so is the Jewish oral tradition. Your point? I mean, that you got to understand, Luke. Egypt was not the only prehistory culture that existed. So, well, I don't know when Star Trek was running in 78. In 78, Star Trek was on every day. And that was the beauty. When I was a kid, Star Trek was on every single day. And I love that. I was comparing, let's see. I'm comparing the Abrahamic religion with something older than itself. Well, the problem is that older is a relative. Like it might be older than the written documents, but it's probably not older than the oral tradition. That's the problem you run into. Braveheart had a Jesus-like death. That is very true, Bird. Except that, I mean, while the death, the execution itself is in a sense very much similar to crucifixion. However, William Wallace himself didn't voluntarily go. He was captured against his will. Luke, it's not older though. Oh, it's not, but I know you meant not. It's not it's not. But yeah, that's the problem is that, Luke, you're not taking into account oral tradition. You're taking into account the oldest manuscripts. And the oldest manuscripts, yes, are not as old as anything that existed prior to writing. That's, you know. William Wallace did not have a Jesus-like death and raped English nuns. Well, I'm not getting into the history. I'm talking about the movie Braveheart. And I don't know about him raping English nuns, but yeah, I do know that Wallace was actually part noble. So yeah. Mr. Miles says 12 for some reason, and Richie says 1701 for some reason. I'm comparing two religions from the same era that evolved together in Egyptian, Hittite, Babylonian-controlled areas. Your oral tradition point is irrelevant. Just saying it's irrelevant doesn't make it irrelevant. The point about the oral tradition is that the religion is older than the documents. And if you want to argue that one is older because it existed prior to the existence of writing, so did the Jewish tradition, or the Israeli tradition, if you will. And so to suggest that one is older because it predated writing is to ignore that the other also predated writing. And if Exodus was an actual event that inspired many of these myths, then again, that would kind of make sense that that it's older. Didn't Romans execute Jews or Jesus? Yes, the Romans actually performed the execution at the will of the Jewish leadership. The Braveheart film is rubbish history. Yes, but it's a great movie. Enter, I never talked about Egyptian manuscripts. You assumed I didn't say a word about Egyptian manuscripts. You said it predated writing, and I said so does the Jewish faith. So you don't have an exact date for either one. I think the Jewish Orthodoxy executed Jews. The Romans allowed it to happen. Now, the Romans actually did the deed, but they did it at the request of the Jews. Because and if you read the Gospels, it's all pretty clear. The Jewish Pharisees wanted Christ to be executed. However, based on the law, they could not execute him. Only the state could, and the state was the Roman Empire. So they took Jesus to them and said, "You need to execute this guy because he believes that his authority is greater than Caesar's." And Pontius Pilate, who was the local Roman authority, did not have a problem with Jesus. He didn't want to execute him, and he tried to give him a stay, but the Jews insisted that he be executed, and he ended up being executed. Didn't the Ten Commandments involve writing? Interesting point. And the stone tablets absolutely did. But there was not traditional writing in the sense of like manuscripts and stuff like that. Now, how did that work? I don't know. But if the Ten Commandments was post-Exodus, which it was according to the Bible, then not post-Exodus, it was in Exodus, but if it happened after the actual migration out of Egypt, that could have been the invention of the written word in a sense. But he was executed. It wasn't suicide. He didn't choose it. True. 1701A, says Richie. Bloody yank. No, Braveheart isn't good. Longshanks did nothing wrong. Well, obviously you're biased towards the English. Hi ho, it's off to work I go. To build BIRDOPREY and blow it up. Hi ho. Have a good one. Legally ain't morally, people. Legally ain't morality. That's true. Law and morality are two different things. What we call Orthodox Judaism didn't exist until the Middle Ages and not called Orthodox until the 18th century. Well, Orthodox, it's an interesting point, but Orthodoxy can't exist until something's been around for a long time. Because you have to establish an orthodoxy over time, and then you have to have variants that make things non-orthodox. Let me phrase it this way. Egyptians were building temples and altars for their gods before the Hebrews left any trace at all. We found them. We've dated them. We know they're older, period. And again, so what? They also believed in people with bird heads and dog heads and all that crap, which we, except for in Stargate SG-1 where they're space helmets, we don't see any evidence of that. But, and by the way, we, if you want to use hieroglyphics as a form of communication, you do realize that a lot of that is assumption. Just saying. But regardless of all that, even if the ancient myths of Horus or whatever were 100% true, that doesn't mean that the biblical account is not. But I don't believe they were true, obviously. But then again, I'm not a follower of said belief system. Mr. Londo says, let me give you a book recommendation. Killing Jesus by Bill O'Reilly. Well worth the read. It's all about historical Jesus. I've heard of the book. I'm not a big reader, and the main reason I'm not a big reader is I'm dyslexic. But yeah. Maybe a tough topic. You may skip it, but what's your view on executions? In Europe, they're forbidden, despite Europe seems to be far less religious than the U.S. Personally, as far as execution, it's interestingly enough is that the Bible, even with the cross, is not anti-capital punishment. And in fact, one of the thieves on the cross next to Christ says, well, we're getting what we deserve. I do not have a problem with execution as a form of corporal punishment for heinous crimes. However, I do think it should be reserved for heinous crimes, such as murder or a serial rapist or something like that. I do think that there needs to be consequences, but I also think that said consequences need to be dispensed dispassionately. If you commit crime A, you get punishment B, period. Now, and so that I don't think that sentencing should be at the whim of a judge. I think that sentencing should be automatic. This is the sentence for this crime. And if you want to say first, second, third offense, fine. If you're a murderer, first offense, 25 years in prison. Second offense, execution. Period. Done. Rape, first offense, I don't know, a couple of years in prison. Second offense, 20 years in prison. Third offense, execution. Something like that. Now, I'm not saying that we should be, bloodthirsty killers, but I think that if you set that and the reason execution does not work as a deterrent in our criminal justice system is because everybody knows if you get sentenced to death, you're more likely going to die of old age waiting for your execution. So it's not really that much of a deterrent. And for people who are desperate, living in prison is better than living on the street. Because you have shelter, you have meals, and as long as you can defend yourself, you've got a safe place. So, and you know what? It's no rougher in prison than it is living on the streets, as far as the violence and stuff. So, yeah. Some of my family fought on different sides of the Scotland-England battles had to trigger the Sutherlands. Well, that's interesting. Obviously, the ones that fought on the English side were wrong, but that's okay. Well, what we call Orthodox Judaism is actually descended from the Pharisees. Eastern European Jews had other groups like I can't even pronounce that one. I'm not going to try. The Pharisees are an interesting group, but yes. 1701C. Oh my God, Mr. Miles is counting down. Is he? I don't know what is he counting down to? Quantum disturbance to something. Hey, Edgar, when I get home tonight, I will help Bird make a base. Sorry to break up the good dialogue. Keep it up. Thank you, Wesley. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. I'll have to try and figure out a way to continue work on my base, despite having problems with it. All forms of rabbinic Judaism came from the Pharisees. The Pharisees were the Jewish leaders of the day. And the Pharisees, it's funny because we think of the Pharisees as a negative. They were, the religious experts. And not every Pharisee in the Bible is portrayed as a negative in the New Testament. There are Pharisees that talk to Jesus in a very positive way. So, it's not all bad. Paganism is starting to sound pretty good. Let's see here, get caught up. The river runs red, use the dirt track instead. Giggity. Okay, that's really nasty. Sash, real paganism from the past is not modern Wicca. That's true. It's like Satanism today is kind of interesting because it has nothing to do with worshiping the devil. Being pro-life in all circumstances, I'm personally against capital in all cases, though there are many who feel deserve and probably do. I personally think it's wrong. Fair enough, Shomer. I'm just saying if you're going to do it, you need to do it in a dispassionate way. However, I will also say that as far as birth is concerned, I am I'm not pro-life. I am anti-choice. I think that abortion should be performed when it's medically necessary and no other time, period. Joseph says, thanks. You're welcome. Resolute says, Andrew, Killing Jesus is a good read, very well researched. The audio book, I assume you audio book we were purchasing. I might one of these days. Bill O'Reilly, despite his kind of going off the walls sometime, is actually a pretty good writer. Depending on the prison, take Guantanamo Bay, for example, I'd rather die than spend a life there. Yeah, but you're not going to go to Gitmo for committing a crime in the United States. And what are you counting down to? It's like Independence Day. It's nothing good from the countdown. Yeah. Okay, Slash, stop the fairy tale rubbish. Yeah, I don't particularly appreciate the fairy tale comment there, Slash. I didn't say anything, but if you're, I understand that to you it's no different, but you don't need to use insulting language. If you want to have a conversation about it, and again, Slash, I love you, man. You're a great guy, or person, I should say, because your name is not gender specific. But the if you're going to have a conversation, if you disagree with it, and you say, well, you could say it's all fiction. But to say it's all fairy tales is to basically be condescending and dismissive in a way that is not appropriate for a real discussion. And I'm dating a Jew, says SK. Well, okay. By the way, Deep Astronomy will be live from Kennedy Spectre in about 70 minutes. Oh, very cool. So there's one for you. Regarding how we handle the death penalty, I want to make absolutely certain that we have the right person. So all appeals are just part of the process to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I agree that we should make absolutely certain that, and in fact, I would make that a part of it, is that, we have guilty means that it is beyond a reasonable doubt that this person committed the crime, right? That gets you a guilty verdict. I would say in a capital punishment case, if you reach a guilty verdict, it's automatic life in prison. Then you have to go to, and a lot of cases do this, where it goes to the sentencing phase. If it's a capital crime, then you have to make the determination, is it absolutely definite that this person did it? Is the evidence beyond repute? If so, capital punishment time. If not, then it stays at life in prison. However, do you know what I do not believe in? Parole. As far as, they're sentenced to 5 years, but in 6 months they get off on parole. That kind of crap needs to end. I think that people should, there really should be. So, for example, now there are some cases where, like, okay, you were an accessory to murder, you're sentenced to 5 years to life, meaning that you go in for 5 years, and at 5 years we will reassess and either parole you or you will stay in for another 5 years, etc. For non-capital crimes, I'm okay with that. But if you commit and like I said, accessory to murder is different than murder. And by the way, a very wonderful man who's also a pastor that I have nothing but respect for, wrote an autobiography called 5 to Life, because that was his sentence when he went to San Quentin and for accessory to murder. But the minimum number of years to life, that's the only kind of thing with parole. But if you are, say you commit a crime and the sentence for that crime is 5 years in prison, you will serve 5 years in prison, period. Mr. Miles is still catching up. SK agrees with me on abortion. I appreciate that. You people are paranoid. I'm not counting down to anything, but you are counting down. The main reason I don't support capital punishment is because there's still a high probability that someone has been wrongfully convicted. Well, that's why I say what I just said. 1701G. Wow, man, we got weird things going on here. Captain Redneck saying, shut up, Wesley. Enter, I'd like to recommend a good, dramatic, foreign, indie, post-World War II movie that deals with the treatment of prisoners of war, but I won't post it here. I'll use your Twitter account to do so. All right, Tree Rock, I'll check it out. Good morning, Ed Tricker. Hope you're well. Thank you, Uncle Remus. I'm hanging in there. Just to be sure, putting the countdown to 23. Thank you, Joseph. Let's check that number 23 because we need a little break. Thank you, Joseph. I do appreciate the €2. You are very kind. Oops, I skipped the Enterprise. Uh-oh. I will dole out all sentences from now on, says SK. Well, that's kind of scary. Let's see. She works in a factory. Oh, your Jewish girlfriend? Okay. Not quite sure. Maybe space engineers. Oh, that could be interesting. Hope I'm around to catch that one. Because watching Bird play space engineers is like, well, watching Bird play space engineers. Mr. Miles says, hey, Trey, there's no such thing as a perfect system, so having a system that uses it guarantees innocence will be killed at some point. Even DNA evidence has turned out to be faulty years later due to someone lying or messing up a number. You're right, there's no such thing as a perfect system, Mr. Miles, but we also need to, in a society of 300 million people, you need to maintain some semblance of order. And the problem is that we need to have an unbiased and unprejudicial system. And that's what is at the core of the problem. It's not about what the punishment is. It's about that the system is extremely biased right now, and we need to fix that. Without parole, how do you try to get prisoners to act good in prison? Well, because you can have, basically what I would say is, I'm not saying that the parole system should be completely eliminated. It's just that there needs to be a minimum sentence that you will serve. So if the crime is, like I said, accessory to murder, I don't have a problem with a 5-year sentence. And at that point, you can be put up for parole. However, don't say, you're sentenced to 15 years in prison, and then 3 years later, they get out on parole. No, you set this is how long you will serve. No matter what happens, you will serve this length of time. At that point, you will be assessed. If you are deemed to still be a threat to society, you don't get to come out just because you served that time. And so if you're sentenced to 10 years, at the end of that 10 years, if you're a brutal, butthurt dick in prison, you're staying in prison. On abortion, women have plenty of agency and means of choice to begin with. F or not, protected or not, pill or not, spermicide, tomorrow's pill, give the child away for pregnancy, after pregnancy. I agree, Luke, but like I said, that's why I say I'm anti-choice. If it's medically necessary, do it. If it's not medically necessary, you don't do it. End of discussion for me. I have no choice but to use parole. Our prisons are overflowing. When you break down the family structure and have a lack of legal employment to get more crime, that is a problem, dude. And I do think that the criminal justice system is a huge topic that we could spend hours and hours talking about. There's the racial bias of the judicial system, but that also stems from the racial bias in some of our police forces and stuff. I think that the Black Lives Matter group exaggerates things, but there is a genuine racial bias out there, particularly in America's larger cities. I will tell you that me and Mrs. Anti-Trekker have been harassed by police a whole lot when we lived on the West Coast. Strangely enough, now that we live in the South, we're not harassed by the police. Go figure. It's almost like people in the South are less racist than people in California. Wow. But, it does, in fact, happen. But the funny thing is, they sit there and point the finger at the South when that's not the source of the issue. Luke says, to me, there's no reason for abortion in the first place besides the medical one, apart from giving a woman yet another way to escape the responsibilities by making others suffer. You and I agree on that, Luke, for the most part. I don't think abortion for convenience sake should ever be on the table. Abortion should be done because it's medically necessary. What defines medical necessity? Well, first of all, you have to be a doctor to define medical necessity, but medical necessity could mean that if the pregnancy is carried through, that there's a significant risk to the life of the mother. And by the way, I do say life, not health, because anything and everything can affect your health. However, only certain things can put your life in danger. So if carrying the child to full term could endanger your life, that would be a reason. That would actually be the same as killing someone in self-defense, right? Now, I would also recognize that in certain cases, such as rape or incest, while it's not an automatic sure, go for it, but if a clinical psychologist or psychiatrist determines that the trauma involved of carrying that child to term would be too much for the person to carry, then that could be medical necessity. And it's harsh, it's brutal, but I would recognize the authority of the medical professions. So that's where I stand with it. Mary was 13 years old when she was knocked up. I don't know. Oh, you're talking about Mary is in Jesus' mom. Well, that's an estimation, but yes. But that was also the norm for that society at that time. I feel the capital sentence leaves no room for remorse. It may take some 50 years to realize how heinous their crime was and to offer an apology and bring closure to the victim's family. I understand that, but you know what else brings closure to the victim's family? The knowing that the person who committed the crime is gone and cannot come back. Slash.dash says, I'll give you £100 to upload the video of you and Matt Dillon hunting. If I can find it, Slash, I will do so. I don't know if I still have it. That's the problem. It was a long time ago that we had that discussion, but I'll see. And maybe Lore has it. I don't know if Lore Reloaded has, because he hosted our discussion. I'll do some digging. Discord entry here. These people give religion a bad name. You guys in Discord, what'd you do now? Let me go here. And Peter. The creation of the Bible is true because God says the Bible is true. Well, this is an atheist website, and that's a kind of a whatever simplification of it, but yeah. So I'm not sure what your point is, because this is actually an article from an atheist, from what I understand of this website. I mean, Friendly Atheist is the name of the website. But maybe they mean they're friendly to atheists? I don't know. And let's see. I wanted... you want that? Do you want the money too? Well, then you put up the video. That should have been a full photon torpedo spread instead of a boot kick. It does not mean those convicted of a capital crime should ever be released. Well, yeah. And that's the thing, though, Shomer. If we're going to... And here's the thing. If we want to say, okay, we're not going to execute criminals because of that chance, I can get behind that, all right? However, then we need to immediately say, however, capital offenses now mean life in prison, no chance of parole, period, right? There is no way out unless the conviction is overturned. And so, and you build prison facilities just for these people. Where there is, once you check in, you do not check out ever, unless like I said, it's overturned. And let's see. BIRDOPREY. Also not sure. Unfortunately, feeling great this morning. Hopefully we'll feel better by later. Mostly anxiety stuff. Bird, I'm sorry. I know that. Believe me, I understand. My thoughts and prayers with you, man, because I know you... Dude. You go through more crap. I mean, I complain about my back so much, and you never bitch about it. You are so much better person than me. 5 dislikes. Well, if we're talking about religion, what do you expect? I'm expecting to get flagged as hate speech any minute now. And Peter, what's the dislike? Here's the problem, and the honest truth. People will put dislike because someone is saying something they disagree with, right? So because I have the nerve to talk frankly about religion and the fact that I happen to be a believer, then some people will just automatically dislike. Just like some people have unsubscribed to the channel because I came out as a Christian. Whatever, dude. I'm the same person I was before. It's not like all of a sudden I think The Last Jedi is wonderful. I'm still going to say F you, Rian Johnson. I can't, when Star Wars Episode 9 comes out, if it is a steaming pile of crap that we all suspect it will be, I will be the first person looking forward to doing a full-on review of that, just like I did with The Last Jedi. So I am but some people can't get past that ideology. It's just like there are some, like, I'll be completely honest with you, and I'm not going to name the person because that would be unfair. There's a person in my family, a close relative of mine, that will hardly speak to me anymore. Why? Because I'm not a liberal Democrat. And it's like, your family, your close family, what are you doing? Well, this person broke down in tears because of the fact that I don't hate George Bush, right? And so that kind of thing, that disgusts me. I'm sorry. If you can't get past an ideology and see the person, then whatever. We got bigger problems. What about some Star Trek type things we've seen where they wipe the person's personality or do something else, basically zombify him or her? Is that better than a death sentence? That's an interesting idea, but I don't know. Slash says, anti-choice sounds terrible. Perhaps, but it's clinically correct. pro-life, here's the problem, pro-choice, pro-life. And I actually got anti-choice from the pro-choice movement because, of course, pro-life people say that the pro-choice group are pro-abortion, right? That's what they try to say, to try and characterize them as negative. The pro-choice movement tries to characterize pro-life people as anti-choice, to characterize them as negative. So I said, you know what? I am anti-choice. I don't believe that a person who goes out and sleeps around and gets knocked up is qualified to determine whether or not that pregnancy should be terminated. Now, you might say, well, they barely qualify to be a parent as well. Yes, but they did the deed. Now they got to live with the consequences. And there are options, such as adoption, right? And as Luke said earlier, there are a million different ways of birth control. And believe me, if you don't want to have a kid, you can avoid it. So it's not like you can't, you can't avoid getting pregnant in the first place. Now, I understand, and that's, rape, incest, those are horrible things. I'm not belittling that in any way. And that's why I said, if a psychiatrist or psychologist determines that the trauma of that event is too much for the person to bear and the abortion must be done on those grounds, fine. If a medical professional certifies that it is medically necessary, then I'm okay with it. And by the way, I'm not inventing some new standard of things. I used to work for Blue Cross Blue Shield. I worked for them for years, about 8 years. And medical necessity is something that they use all the time. For example, one thing that would constantly come across my desk, people trying to get the insurance company to pay for breast augmentation, right? Now, breast augmentation can mean both enlargement and reduction, keep in mind. And for reduction, many of the times the doctor, a medical doctor, will certify that the woman is suffering from intense back pain because of the improper distribution of weight, because her breast may be too big for her frame, something like that. And because of the chronic back pain or other conditions that develop as a result of it, that it is medically necessary and the insurance company will pay for the procedure. There are cases for enlargement where a psychiatrist or psychologist will say that this person is dealing with the stigma of having small breasts or whatever, and it has really gotten to them, and they're taking, a million drugs for antidepressants and anxiety and stuff, and the only way we can really get past this is for them to feel better about their body, and they need breast implants in order to do that. And that has been approved. All right. So medical necessity is not anything new and not something I just pulled out of my butt. It is a real standard that can be clinically and appropriately applied to things like abortion. Couldn't you say you're pro-choice, just not the last one, abortion? Well, except that I am anti-choice as far as the actual enactment of the procedure. And let's see. And now my whole chat just screwed up here. All right, I'm just going to read the ones addressed to me, and then we're going to wrap it up because I'm really starting to lose it here. I agree with the racial bias thing on the basis that progressives are racist, conservatives aren't, minus evidence exceptions here and there. Well, and that's the thing. I'm not saying liberals are conservatives, or liberals are racist, conservatives aren't. I'm just saying that from my personal experience living in California and Oregon, me and Mrs. Antitrekker experienced a whole lot of racism. Living in Tennessee, we have not. That's all I'm saying. Oh, and I sent you a special present on Discord for Kerbal too. All right, I will check it out. 100 pounds of what? I must something. Nukes for Kuroga. Yes, Kuroga does need nukes. We'll send them to them right away. Antrekker, you're sentenced to Rura Pente. Well, that would suck. Catarina, I wouldn't trust a site called Friendly Atheist. He's probably very militant, anti-religion atheist. Probably. Shormer says, 100% agree. If capital crime and no death penalty should be life without any possibility of parole. Yes. And so let's see. Mr. Miles says, channel and or video interaction is what helps videos the most. So please thumb it down if you don't like it. It's better than doing nothing. You are 100% correct, Mr. Miles. Thumbs down is actually helpful to the channel. So if you like me, but you dislike a particular video, then by all means, give it a thumbs down. And plus, that helps me know where the fans stand on things. Because when I see a video that has 250 thumbs up and 1 thumbs down, I'm like, okay, people like this one. But if 500 people hated that video and just didn't say thumbs down, I have no way of knowing that that's not a video that people want to see. Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't give 2 craps, Anti-Trekker. It generally is, it's good. Are you saying I'm generally good? But you should give 2 craps. I have 2 craps right there on my desk. I still like you, Anti-Trekker, even though you're Christian. Well, thank you, Richie. And Captain Redneck says, I still like you, even though you don't like First Contact. Oh, Captain Redneck. You're never going to get past that, are you? Be a black guy and admit to voting Republican. Be a black guy and admit to voting Republican like me and see what you go through. Oh, I don't doubt it. I'll tell you, black conservatives, that's a tough road to hoe, man, because there are a lot of people that just, and the funny thing is, who's the guy? There was something at Capitol Hill recently where they were talking about the reparations, and they had a black NFL player who testified and said, you know what? I used to be a Democrat like every other black person. Then I learned history and I realized what a lie we've been sold about the political parties, that it was the, and it's like, and it's so funny because to this day, people like AOC and other Democrats are talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Yes, that the Democrats opposed and the Republicans were pushing, and JFK sided with Republicans against his own party and swayed enough people so that after his death, they passed it. All right. Look at the freaking history, people. The Democrats were not behind the Civil Rights Act of 1964. JFK was a supporter of it. He was a good man. But he was going against his party. But people want to say, oh, yeah, the Democrats, the party of civil liberties. No, they were the party against civil liberties. But they've sold people because Kennedy was president when that came up. They sold people on the idea that Democrats are all for the minorities, and they've held on to that ever since then and have rewritten history to now where 90% of black people in this country will not even stop for a second and vote for a Democrat, never even considering a Republican, despite the fact that if you survey, and this is absolutely true, if you survey a lot of black families, I would dare say a majority of black families, and you ask them neutral, not asking about Democrat or Republican, you ask them about issues, they're going to go conservative a lot. And so, that's the ironic thing about it. So it is a very effective propaganda piece that the Democrats have sold people that the Democratic Party is all about civil liberties. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Now, it's kind of true in the case of the LGBT community. I'll give them that. But when it comes to race, oh no, they were way behind the curve on that. Mr. Miles has avoided getting pregnant for 33 years now. Pretty impressive. And prom night dumpster baby. Oh, that's just horrible. Breast reduction should be illegal. Oh, that's horrible. I hope Mrs. ain't working too hard looking after you, Anti-Trigger. She is a wonderful wife and she does help me. I try, and she gets mad at me for not, like, for example, again, I hate admitting this, but it's true. I need help sometimes just getting dressed in the morning because of the level of pain I'm going through. And I hate asking Mrs. Anti-Trekker to help me. And she gets mad at me for not asking her because she sees me struggling to get my shirt on. And it's like, just let me help. And it's kind of funny, as Captain Kirk said, let me help. One day people will say that's even more profound than I love you. You are a pile of crap, and I mean that lovingly. I accept that praise. Thank you. And tell everyone to join the server tonight. Yes, Wesley, if you haven't already, you should join our Space Engineers server. It's a lot of fun, and you can build your own stuff and join the faction of the Anti-Trekker, or we might be setting up another faction of the Kurogans. I think that could be interesting. I still like you, Andy-Tracker, even if you pay me slave wages. If I were paying you slave wages, Mr. Miles, I wouldn't have paid you. Ah, see? Got you there. And he pays Mr. Miles barely, Richie. Well, Mr. Miles, okay, we'll be transparent here. Mr. Miles gets 25% of my ad revenue. 25%. Now, that sounds like a huge number until you look at the actual ad revenue. You think, oh, Andy-Tracker, you got 8,600 subs. You know how much Mr. Miles got this month? $55. You can do the math. Just woke up. I like you, even though you go to a cult church. UBERCHAT 10. Thank you, Thomas. I can always count on you for words of wisdom.
Hello, everybody. Is your front yard not growing according to your plan? Are you unable to eradicate those pesky, rebellious crabgrass? Call us. I am the lawn master, and everything will grow according to my design. Do it.
Oh, man. So welcome, Thomas. No one is the same as 100 years ago, but Republicans aren't racist. But here's the thing, SK. The Civil Rights Act was 1964. That ain't 100 years ago. It is pure propaganda to believe that the Democratic Party has been standing for civil rights in the 20th century. They were not. Republicans also passed the 19th Amendment. Another interesting Sunday stream. Have a good day, friends. Thank you, Trust, and you take care. Shomer says, I look at the individual, not their ideological label. You'll find good and bad people regardless of their ideology. Every single group has their bad eggs who blame others based on identity. You are 100% right, Shomer, and that is a major problem in politics and stuff today. Try Hawaiian shirts. Much easier to get on. You know, I used to have a couple of Hawaiian shirts. I like Hawaiian shirts. I'll have to get a couple. Choice abortion is a violation of the children's human rights, in my opinion, and it should be written down to counter those abortion laws. Rape is a special case, goes against consent. Well, first of all, like I said, as far as the rape, incest type thing, refer it to experts in psychology. But that's why I say I'm anti-choice. And I think you agree with me on that. So a choice abortion is a violation of the children's human rights. I agree with you 100%. And it's not a religious deal. That's the thing. I'm not making an argument based on, oh, well, he's a Christian, so he's against abortion. No, I'm against abortion because it kills people. And you cannot convince me that it's not killing a person, because you are a genetically complete person once the egg begins and the sperm begin to divide into cells. Once the first division, it's a genetically complete person, because their genomes have combined. Andy Trigger calls me every day at 5 a.m. to tell me how good his Super Chat money smells. Yeah. $55. I admire your dedication, Mr. Miles. Yeah, Mr. Miles works his ass off for that $55, and I cannot praise him enough for it. And I'm hoping, and that's the goal, is that as we grow the channel, Mr. Miles he's gonna always get 25% of the ad revenue. So if I'm making $10,000 a month on ad revenue, he'll get $2,500 of that, and that's where we want to get to. Honestly, that's where we want to get. And Mr. Miles is the only person getting paid right now. BIRDOPREY isn't yet, and I want to pay BIRDOPREY as well, but I can't afford to. Honestly, because most of the money that I make off of this channel goes right into this house. Enter, you will pay Mr. Miles 25 pesos. Okay. You should pay Mr. Miles in Quatlus. I should, but unfortunately, Google doesn't pay out in Quatlus yet. Are you withholding the Gawood sarcophagus to cure Andy Trigger back when he coughs up the cash? Back until he coughs up the cash. Mr. Miles is now at number 2. Interesting, because I'm just about done. So you better finish your countdown, Mr. Miles, because I'm about to wrap up any second here. Well, I've set up my own wiki page again, Antchicker. You set up a wiki page for what, Peter? And give me a link, and we'll check it out if it's appropriate. 1701J says, Richie, what is with you guys? And Mr. Miles counting down to something and Richie Poole throwing in 1701 letters. I don't understand. Captain Redneck says, have a good day, y'all. All right, Captain. I'm going to forward the snip that I sent to Captain Foley also to Captain George so that they know what's going on. And so thank you, though, for that, Captain Redneck. I truly do appreciate it. No, my own creator page. Okay. Enter. In France, choice abortion is allowed only between 0 to 12 weeks of pregnancy. I wish most of the pro-choice America would at least align to our laws. I would agree, but I still think that, it's a complete human being after implantation has taken place. I've been counting down to the end of the stream, actually. Well, you've done a good job because you timed it just about right. Thanks, Enter. I have no way of reaching Foley except this. I understand, Captain. I do. I figured that. And so I want to make sure that I get the information out. And so I'm make sure that both Captain Foley and Captain George get that. But in the meantime, guys, thank you for hanging out with me. As always, Sunday mornings are different and probably going to get me banned from the interwebs because